Pleasure travel, the new trend of traveling for sex. Video by Ali Imperial. Y'all go check her out if y'all like this video. My question is this really a new trend? Or is this something that's just been going on forever, but nowadays people just have no shame. People have no shame nowadays. So when it comes to stuff like this, they just putting it on the internet, talking about it, sharing it with everybody. Let's go ahead and check out our video though. 1 second, let me speed this up just a little bit, just a little tad bit. There we go.
First play party in Mexico. And while I was there, I met a bunch of people who had literally flown in that morning just for the party. And they were flying out the next day. And I was like, wait a minute. There's a whole new level of commitment here, and that's when it hit me. We need to talk about something that's quietly becoming a thing. It's called pleasure travel. And no, it's not the same thing as sex tourism. And no, it's not just people being reckless. It's actually more.
Is it not the same thing? You know, even if you are going to a place with a partner, is that not the same as the S tourism? I don't know. She's gonna have to convince me that this is not the same thing, because it seems like this is one of those things when, you know, something becomes a little bit more open, they try to put a different label on it.
Than that. Now, I travel a lot. And if you're new here, my name is Allie. Hello. I am a sex education student with the Sexual Health Alliance. And on this channel, we have some casual conversations about sex, relationships, and other fun stuff. And I love coming on here and sharing with you all the interesting things I'm learning about my body, sex, and relationships, and also what I'm learning about sex and culture. Now, I don't travel specifically for sex, but let's be honest, it's part of my narrative. If I'm in a city, I'm probably Googling things like local kink events, dating norms, sex culture, adult nightlife, how people connect there. It's really fascinating.
Bro, this is my thing about stuff like this. When guys make content like this and put this on the internet, man, the channels get strike down, videos get demonetized, but because she's framing it as like, oh, you know, I'm a student in this, and you know, this is, and like, you know, she has an appearance that makes her seem like very friendly. I guess she gets to get away with it.
For me. And recently I asked my Patreon community what kind of content they want more of in 2026. I honestly thought they were all going to say more spicy personal stories, but nope. The highest rated answer was sex, culture, travel, and dating norms across the world. So clearly you are all very interested in what sex looks like globally, and honestly, the same. I'm actually coming at you right now from my hotel room in Bangkok, Thailand, and let me tell you, there is a lot of stuff to learn here. But we won't get into that specifically in this video. We're gonna dive into what pleasure travel actually is, why more people are doing it, the psychology behind it, the benefits, the risks, and how this fits into the bigger picture of sex and culture. But
everybody knows, if you don't know, most people know, if they know anything about Thailand, it is probably the biggest adult playground world it has inside of it, especially in cities like Pattaya and Bangkok. They got some of the biggest adult playgrounds in the world in these places. So, you know, there's definitely a lot of S tourism going on in these places. And, you know, I'm cool with calling it pleasure travel. You know, pleasure travel, it sounds a little bit nicer. You know, it probably won't give, like, because a lot of guys, they're getting, especially in places like Colombia, they're getting deported and banned from countries for, you know, promoting this type of stuff in those countries, which, you know, those countries are worried about the image. But I guess if they change it to pleasure travel, then, you know, it's okay.
before we get into all that, I want to define something first. So you may have heard of the term sex tourism. And before we spiral, let me just clarify something, okay? Here's the research-based definition of sex tourism. When researchers and public health organizations talk about sex tourism, they're usually referring to travel where sexual experiences are part of the intention. That definition by itself isn't automatically exploitative. It simply describes the motivation. Now, where it becomes harmful is when it overlaps with trafficking, coercion, or anything involving minors, which are crimes everywhere. And in this video, I'm talking strictly about consensual adult experiences and the broader culture.
And that's the other part of it too, right? When you know, a lot of these guys, they're getting lumped in with people who are doing the bad behavior, whether it's, you know, the stuff with minors, or, you know, it's like, of course you can go to a country and maybe you're, you know, having an experience with a woman. You might have pay for that experience or whatever. And but you don't know that she's being trafficked at that time. You know, that's another thing that's going on in a lot of these countries. So it's a very thin line between all of it. You know, I would suggest, I always tell guys, you know what I'm saying, meet woman in a natural sense. You get a better experience in life when you kind of go into situations, go to a new country, experience the nightlife, and just kind of go in with no expectations. Also open and willing to learn about the language in the country. I think those things really help.
Cultural shift towards what some are calling pleasure travel. Now, that's important to note because trafficking does not equal consensual adult travel, and sleeping with minors is a crime everywhere. We're not talking about that. We're talking about consenting adults who intentionally incorporate sexuality into travel. Pleasure travel feels like a bit of an evolution to this. It's less about buying sex abroad and more about things like erotic festivals, play parties, swinger resorts, kink conventions, destination dating, which is a new term I heard recently, which has a really nice ring to it, erotic retreats, or just plain old sex positive cultural exploration. So it's curated, it's intentional, and it's community based. I mean, I go on sex culture trips that are planned and organized by my school, the Sexual Health Alliance, just to learn about this stuff. We've been to Amsterdam, Prague, Iceland, Barcelona, Berlin. The best part is these trips are for everyone, not just for people enrolled in the program. So if you are interested in that kind of thing and curious about sex culture across the world, I highly recommend you check it out. I'm gonna put that link in the description below. But let's.
You know, the world is so fried. The world is so cooked at this point to where this, like, just even having to go to school, like a school is taking its students on, trips for this stuff. The world is cooked.
Look what the data actually says, because yes, it's not just about the vibes. There is some scientific data about this topic. So there was a large meta-analysis, and they found that about 20% of international travelers report casual sex abroad. And the CDC travel health reports estimate between 20 and 34% of male travelers that engage in casual sex while traveling. Now, nearly half of those encounters do involve inconsistent protection. I'll get into later on in this video how to stay safe while traveling later in this video. I found another study that is a cross-sectional study of backpackers traveling in Bangkok, and they found that 25% has casual sex during their trip. And if we look at the psychology behind it, why does including pleasure during travel sound so enticing? I mean, I feel like it should be obvious, no? You got novelty, which increases your dopamine. You know, you're in a new place, everything is all exciting. You're on vacation, so you got lower stress levels, which increase your libido. And you're also somewhere where nobody knows you. And that anonymity lowers your inhibition and lets you kind of be a little bit freer, a little bit of a different version of yourself, and have a little fun. Travel literally shifts your brain chemistry. You're in a new environment. Nobody knows you. Your identity feels flexible. Your routine is gone. Of course, your desire shifts. So why are people now flying specifically for pleasure events? I think it's a few things. You guys can let me know if you agree or disagree or add in your own thoughts here. So we have digital communities. So we have kink communities, poly communities, lifestyle groups, and people can now coordinate globally.
And I will say the difference between what a lot of guys are doing and what she's talking about here is she doesn't seem to be talking about, guys, again, like how guys pay for the experience. She doesn't seem to be talking about that here. She's talking about people coming here to that, both sides just want to do it, which that is, I will say, different from a lot of the content that you see from men traveling, especially the guys that visit, Thailand, Dominican Republic, Brazil, and Colombia. This is definitely different because it's not a monetary exchange. It seems like in these situations with women, they usually don't have to worry about that, right?
Globally, with the internet all across the world. So you don't just stumble into these things, you actually research it, you book it, and so on. Then we have delayed marriage and sexual autonomy. So people are single longer, or they're redefining relationships. People aren't having as many children. People have a little bit more disposable income and are traveling a little bit more. Pleasure is becoming less taboo and more integrated. And then we have a burnout culture. We all know burnout, right? And people aren't looking just for relaxation anymore. They want aliveness. They want to feel something. They want to do something different. And pleasure travel often offers that intensity. And finally, we have plain old cultural curiosity. I mean, sex is culture. Dating norms in Mexico are not the same as Thailand. Swinging culture in Europe is not the same as North America. So
swinging culture, like, Dang, man. Some of y'all very familiar. Y'all watching this like, I'm a swinger. Like, yeah, we go to swinger parties all the time. Yeah, international swingers parties. I did a video the other day where a woman was talking about there's an actual kind of like swingers resort in Cancun. So, a lot of this is normal for people. And hey, I'm all for it. I think everybody should do what they want to do. Just be safe. Don't be going around, especially unprotected. You don't know what people got. Just be having kids for somebody that lives in a whole different country. That could be awkward and difficult for you. So, definitely just be careful. I kind of question the morality of all the people who are visiting, but I'm sure in general, it's probably just a lot of good people. They just freaks at the end of the day. They just freaks. That's all it is, man.
For some people, exploring intimacy is part of exploring the world. Now let's get into the benefits here, all right? Because there are several. One being exploration without hometown reputation, right? In your hometown, everyone knows you. People have certain biases towards you or judgments, but in a new space, you can be whoever you want to be. And then you have intentional erotic environments. So spaces that are curated specifically to try out some erotic adventures in a safe way. You can meet like-minded adults, and that alone is just so great. You can experience different cultural attitudes towards sexuality, and this one can be particularly and incredibly liberating for most people, especially if you come from a purity culture back in the West. Pleasure travel just reignites your libido, whether you're a solo person or whether you're in a
Yeah, I will say I feel like a lot of the women that end up in this, they're the type that, the family was like super strict, didn't let them do much when they were teens. It's kind of like the girl that goes to college and just becomes like a super hoe, right? Like we've all known a woman like that. So, that's another reason why, I guess with your kids, you want them to know what's out there. Don't kind of just like, if you want to protect them from something, that's cool, but tell them why. Don't just say no, don't do that, because that's just going to make them be more interested and want to explore more. Next thing you know, they taking pleasure travel trips every month.
couple. And speaking of couples, sheer novelty increases the bonding hormones. Travel already boosts your connection, and if you add consensual erotic play to that, for some couples, that is powerful. Now, my partner and I have definitely felt many of the benefits while participating in fun, consensual sexual activities abroad and alone as well, because, I've traveled by myself quite a bit and have had my own experiences. I do share many of these experiences on my Patreon, so if you want to support the channel and learn more about sex and culture, you can check it out. I'm going to link it below. But with benefits, always come risks. So here's the other side. You have the potential of higher STI exposure rates. So this is very clearly stated in the research in nearly all.
Very clearly stated, because this is again something when they talk about guys going to do this, and it, like I said, it's a difference, right? Because guys, if they're going to a country and they're just consistently paying for it, they're entertaining like the underworld and those type of women that just sell themselves. You got to understand, those women are doing that multiple times a day. Hopefully they're being safe, but that's definitely an increased risk. I will say in general though, if you're just going somewhere, you're having consensual acts and it's with like a regular person, they're not even someone that's going to like these types of events, is you got about the same chance that you do kind of anywhere. Some places even less than the United States, because we all know, like, especially some of the major cities here in the United States, the STD rates there are through the roof, right? They're through the roof. So that is a big thing to worry about when you are just being such a fucking super freak, I guess.
Studies on sex and travel, inconsistent condom use is an issue. And one of the reasons for that is risk taking due to alcohol and novelty. You're drinking, you're somewhere new, it's fun and exciting, and like this is a lethal combination. When you drink, your inhibitions go down, and it's just no bueno. It's not a good look, What other risks? You have legal differences across countries, cultural misunderstandings, you gotta be careful, you have ethical gray areas, if you're not informed. And just because something is normalized in one country, it doesn't mean it's safe, legal, or ethical. For example, in Thailand, even though things pretty much have sex everywhere, like you walk around, it's like sex, 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 sex. Not everywhere, but it can be pretty loud in some places. Sex work is still very much illegal here. Also, consent standards vary culturally. So, at the end of the day, pleasure travel requires
consent standards. And for some of you, fucking weirdo type of guys that, you think this country's age of consent is lower. No, when and correct me if I'm wrong, right? But if you're an American, it doesn't matter where you go. You're not like, you still got to follow the American laws, right? So like somewhere like Colombia, where the age of consent might be very low to like 14 or some shit like that, it's still, you still can get in trouble. You're still a creep. You're still a weirdo. And for them people that's born in that country, that's different, right? Because they born in that culture. That's them. If that's what they like to do, to each his own. Leave that to them, right? Let their own country deal with them. But you have the responsibility as an American to know that, what I'm saying, that shit still ain't seen as okay, and I'm pretty sure that anybody in their right mind that's not a weirdo would agree with that, regardless if it was illegal or not, right?
Requires maturity and research beforehand if you are going to engage in some of these activities. But if you do, how can you stay safe during pleasure travel? Now, let's talk about the practical side of things. If you're going to blend travel and sexuality, casually, intentionally, whatever you want, you need to approach it like an adult. So here are just some tips that I've done myself or that I've read that I thought were a good idea that could potentially help you. But always do your own research. The first one, mucho importante, know your testing window. If you are sexually active while traveling, understand the incubation period for STIs. So testing the day you land home doesn't always give accurate results because some infections take weeks to show up. In that case, you could consider testing abroad, but do your research first. Not all clinics are equal. Look for internationally accredited clinics, travel health clinics, or recommended clinics on Facebook groups and so on. I personally
Bro, that's a really dangerous way to live, bro. If you're living this lifestyle and you're not being safe, it's just a dangerous way to live, bro. Like, that's why I tell guys, like, yeah, the pay for play, that's always there, but just try to find you a regular girl, somebody that's not active, with every guy with a different passport and a little bit of money in his pocket, bro. Because that shit, like, what I'm saying, it could get dangerous. Women, definitely protect yourselves, because I know it's some things that y'all can contract a lot easier than a man can. So, that's something to think about as well, bro.
Have tested the medical system in a few places in the world, specifically Mexico and Thailand, and I will say a little bit more efficient than it is back home in Canada. So you have many private labs. Again, do your research, but you can also go to a hospital or whatever. It's accessible, it's affordable, and it's quick. You don't have to make appointments way ahead of time. The fees are not so high. You can get results within 24, 48 hours sent as PDFs to your WhatsApp. Like, it's just a great system, friends. It's a lot more efficient than it is back home, I'll say that much. But you also have to understand confidentiality laws in other countries that you're in as well. Then, of course, we have protection. Bring your own. Condom standards vary, availability varies. Don't just rely on, I'll just find some when I get there, because chances are.
Yes, bro, please. Don't go to Colombia or any of these countries and, use whatever protection they got there. They got different standards for, packaging and how things are kept. And we all know that, condoms, they can get those little microscopic holes in them if they, like that the one that you got in your wallet that's been sitting there for 3 years that you ain't used yet because you don't get no cheeks. That one right there, yeah, you gotta throw that away, because 9 times out of 10 it's probably damaged, bro. It's not as effective when it's not kept in pristine. So definitely bring your own. But like I said, this can be difficult too, because guys are getting turned around for tourism as we speak in Colombia for having too many condoms in their bag. So like I said, man, like, what I'm saying, bring a couple. What I'm saying, don't. Like, shit, for y'all guys that wanted to go to these countries and go crazy, y'all gonna be reckless anyway. So shit. But and then you gotta also think, depending on your race as well, you can't be a black guy going to an Asian country and thinking that they're gonna have something that fits you, right? I'm just saying, like, you might have to bring your own.
When you're in the situation, you might not find a condom around. And especially if you've been drinking, inhibitions go out the window and you say, fuck it. And that one time can really mess you up. So just be careful with that. And then know your laws. So age of consent varies, sex work laws vary, public indecency laws vary, what's normal socially isn't always legal. And again, I'm going to circle back to alcohol because I think this is a big one. Be sober enough to consent. And not just sober enough to consent, but sober enough to accept consent and understand consent when it's given to you from somebody else. If you wait.
And also, women, y'all got to be sober enough to protect yourselves as well. Y'all got to be sober enough to protect yourselves, because at the end of the day, you know, if you, especially if you solo traveling, like I said, it's people all around the world, just like in your own country, in your own city, in your own state, that will try to take advantage of you. So, you know, definitely protect yourself as a woman. Like, don't be getting too lit. If you go somewhere with a group of friends, don't just, you know, go missing from your group of friends because some guy you just met 20 seconds ago said that you look good or whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Definitely don't let any situation like that happen to you if you can, you know.
Pants, you're trying to get it on, and someone is clearly like not giving you an enthusiastic yes, but you're so fucked up that you can't tell. Oof, my friend, that is not a good situation to be in. And like I said before, the novelty of like being away and on vacation and new city, new people, plus drinking, it's a powerful mix. So just be careful with that. And finally, we have vet events and communities. So if you're attending a party or a festival, think about things like, is there a consent policy? Is there security? Is there a vetting process? Intentional spaces are usually well organized, but you never know. Again, some of these things might not seem obvious to you. So for this one, for example, in terms of vetting communities and parties and such, when I went to that first play party in Mexico, when I heard about it, I knew I wanted to go. And I was like, I'm going to go anyways, whether or not Gab, my partner, comes with me or not. So I was telling a friend about it. I said, oh, I'm going to this party. And she said, oh, is Gab going with you? And I said, no, but well, I don't know. Like, I'm going to go. I haven't asked him yet, but if he doesn't want to go, I still want to go. And then she asked me all these questions, like make sure it's consent based, make sure it's this, make sure it's that. And I was like, oh, I was just going to like go. Like it seemed okay, but there were things that I didn't even think about. And yeah, it did end up coming with me, and it ended up being a great consent driven party and so on. But I was kind of naively going into it. I was like, oh, it's gonna be a cool experience and whatever, but it could have turned out to be really ugly. And had I been alone, like, who knows what would have happened. So if you're traveling with friends, make sure that you have Google location sharing on, make sure people know where you are, make sure you have a check-in process and things like that. So yeah, pleasure travel can be empowering, but empowerment.
Okay, I will say, you know, she did convince me that there is a difference between this whole pleasure travel thing and S tourism for sure. And you know, it's layers to it. It's different types. There's a lot of different shit going on there. I didn't know what was going on, right? Some of y'all might participate in some of this stuff. Some of y'all might think it's a little bit too much, like me, you know. I don't think I'm gonna ever go to parties or travel specifically to go to an event, and you know, that's all I'm traveling for. You know, where the food at, where the culture at. You know, I like to dance, party, whatever. Like I said, everybody to each his own. 2026, everybody doing their own thing. Let your freak flag fly. You know, definitely look at content creators who are experienced in pleasure travelology, like this woman right here, to get the information that you need before you just dive into this world, right? If you're somebody that's doing this, or even if you're already in this world, you know, something like this, following somebody like her probably will, you know, refresh your mind or just make you think about some things that you haven't been thinking about. You know, sometimes you might just be that guy that goes out there to the other country, you get drunk, you feeling euphoria, you know, you ain't got that condom on you, but then you like fuck it, and next thing you know, you're burning, or you got a baby on the way. You don't even speak the language of the mother. It can all go bad. It can all go bad. But yeah, let me know what y'all think about this whole thing down below. Is this something that y'all into? Is this something that y'all do? Yeah.
I just wanna be great just to be great.